really be organized and methodical in your approach to applying and be persistent and consistent. Carve out time every day to apply, and every rejection, use it as a redirection.
Welcome, everyone, to the Tech Guide podcast, where we give actionable advice to those wanting to break into tech or looking for their next gig. I am super excited for our next episode here because we have Mahindra Guman, Associate Director at Pace University, talk about the programs offered there and how students can set themselves up for success to land a job. We know you're in December and you guys are going to start looking for your job. So we're going to drop some amazing advice for you guys. But first off, let me welcome Mahindra. Mahindra, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure. I'm so excited to speak about career resources and all these wonderful strategies that students can use and job seekers can use to really help themselves build the foundation of a successful career.
Oh, man, you're going to be awesome. I'm so excited for this. Before we dive into that, though, let's talk about your background. For someone that's listening, they might hear you for the first time. Can you just kind of give a brief synopsis of your background in Pace University?
Certainly. So, as you mentioned, I'm the Associate Director of Career Services at Pace University. Particularly in my role, I oversee the international student career development and programs. However, prior to this position, I was the assistant director of our tech school career services department. So I have, extensive experience in supporting undergraduate as well as graduate level tech students seeking internships, seeking full-time roles, as well as supporting those who may have already had some previous experience find some more advanced positions. My background is in learning and development. I have several years of experience in recruiting and in hiring. So I'm pretty well versed in, what it takes to stand out for a recruiter and for you to really help land a strong interview and a strong position.
Nice. Well, that gives us a good background in talking about landing a position. Let's really dive into it. Undergraduates right now, if they don't have a job, they're definitely searching for one. Right now, the job market's a little tough. So Let's start at the very top of the job search process. Can you give us like one or two tips that have really stood out to you for identifying potential roles that you would be a good fit for?
Yeah, so one of the common mistakes that I find a lot of job seekers make, and this is for any job seeker, is they're very focused on job title instead of job function. And what I've been noticing, especially this past year, the titles that are showing up for different positions, particularly within the tech space, don't necessarily reflect the responsibilities of that role. For example, there was an internship that was posted that the title of the internship was something around news content intern. But when you read through the description, it was purely software development. But somebody searching for, software developer or software engineer, that role isn't going to show up. So one of the things I've been encouraging my students is to search for a key skill or technology that you're comfortable using or that you would like to use. So instead, search for Java or Python, one of those programming languages. Search for API. And the number of results that show up from that are much higher. So in terms of searching for that right job, really search for a keyword or a key skill as opposed to a title. Remember, the title is functional, right? That can change. It's really the skill that we're focused on.
I love that. I want to ask specifically where people should look for jobs. Obviously, like LinkedIn, but I know at the University of Iowa, their platform called like Handshake. When someone sees a job posting, if they had to only choose one, LinkedIn or Handshake, like what would be the best platform for them to actually go through?
Handshake. So, and I say that with full conviction. Listen, I'll be very transparent here. LinkedIn is a wonderful platform for professional networking. In terms of the job search and job applications, it is not a platform I recommend to my students or to any job seeker. I encourage students to use Handshake as well as use more niche job boards. There are such a plethora of niche tech job boards. For those who may be unfamiliar, there's Welcome to the Jungle. It was recently known as Otta. It rebranded as Welcome to the Jungle. That job board is purely for tech and fintech startups.
Interesting.
There's the built in NYC, built in LA, built in San Francisco hubs. Again, startups. There's, FY Hiring Jump. Even Idealist, it's phenomenal. If you go on Idealist, which is a job board particularly for nonprofits, there's a wealth of tech roles in that job board. So I encourage students really diversify the job boards that you're using, shy away from those larger job boards such as LinkedIn and Indeed that are saturated with job seekers. One of the issues that I have with LinkedIn is that often you'll find that jobs are recycled. There's one particular role that I remember seeing, it was said it was posted 3 hours ago, but I went to that company's job portal itself and that role had been live for about 3 or 4 weeks.
Wow.
As a job seeker, if you want to be considered, you need to be an early applicant. So applying through LinkedIn may not necessarily mean that you're going to be an early applicant. So it really behooves candidates to use these smaller, more niche job boards.
I absolutely love that advice because like I've always thought like go to LinkedIn, honestly, just because like that's where the most jobs are going to be posted. But when you go to these more niche job boards, you're going to just have less competition. So
exactly.
You said welcome to the jungle, built in like NYC, built in LA, all those. Can you list like 2 more, 3 more that comes to mind? I hate to put you on the spot here, but just more resources for students.
Sure. So there's Tech Jobs for Good. That's a wonderful platform for candidates who may be interested in tech roles, but they want, a company that has a worthy cause or a role that's going to contribute to, a great mission. I mentioned FY Hiring Jump as well. There's also InterStride. I'm not certain if quite a few folks are familiar with that, but InterStride is a wonderful job board for all candidates, but it has a wealth of resources, particularly for international candidates. So there are webinars that they host. There are resources and online guides that international candidates can use to really help them navigate the job search.
Interesting. I absolutely love that. So thank you for dropping that advice. All right, let's talk about you identify what job boards you should be going to. Let's actually talk about reaching out to like recruiters or how you can stand out in that application process. Obviously, optimize your resume, like have SEO friendly terms or keyword friendly terms, whatever. But what are some other tips that you have to actually stand out in that job search process once you identify the platform?
Wonderful. So this is my wheelhouse. So this is why I'm getting so excited about this. So, I do workshops twice a week on this. It's actually a workshop series I introduced at Pace University called Strategies to Get Hired. It's a 2-part workshop where for the first part, I work with students, in small groups to help them target their resumes. You mentioned, search engine optimization, keyword optimization.
Yep.
For any job seeker, if you're applying to a job, your resume is not a one-size-fits-all document. You want to ensure that you're targeting your resume to each application, pulling as many of those keywords and phrases from the job description as possible to make sure that your resume has it. That way you can clear the applicant tracking system.
Love it.
When it comes to networking, I use this phrase all the time. I tell my students, in order for you to get work, you have to network. And networking, everyone hears this term and they think they know how to do it, but it's much more complex than it may seem. Networking is about establishing a relationship and building a rapport with folks who can make a difference, right? They can put in a word for you. They could serve as a referral, or they could connect you with the right person. For any application that someone puts in, I advise that job seeker, go to LinkedIn. This is where LinkedIn really stands out.
Yeah.
Go to LinkedIn, follow that company, and find at least 3 recruiters and 3 hiring managers. So in terms of the recruiters, you can simply log into LinkedIn, follow that company, go to its people tab, and just type in the word recruiter. And take some time to actually look at each recruiter's profile to understand what specifically they recruit for. If I'm looking for an entry-level software engineer position, I'm not going to, reach out to a recruiter who recruits at the C-suite level. So take some time to familiarize yourself through LinkedIn about what it is that these recruiters recruit for. The same for the hiring team. Usually in the job description, it'll say, this position reports to, the senior software engineer or the director of engineering. Figure out who that position reports to, or search for the position title itself on that company's people tab to see who else has that title or a similar title. Once you've done that, send personalized connection requests to both those recruiters as well as those hiring managers. Now, you're more likely to receive a response if you personalize your connection request. So often folks will just send, they'll hit connect. That does nothing, right? So when you hit connect, you have the opportunity to add a very short note. When it comes to the recruiters, you want to add a note that's very direct. hey, I came across your profile after I applied to the, entry-level software engineer level 1 position.
Yeah.
Are you the correct recruiter for this role? I'd love to talk about my relevant skills. If not, could you connect me or direct me to the correct recruiter? For the hiring managers or folks on that team, hey, I came across your profile after I applied to this software engineer role. I'd love to learn a little bit more about what a day in the life is like for you. What are some of the projects that you get to work on? What's the primary tech stack that you work with? That way you're introducing yourself directly to the folks that have a say in the hiring process. Additionally, even if they don't respond, as long as they see that message, it can really support your application, because now when they're going through the applications that they've received, they're going to say, hey, I know Ryan. He reached out to me on LinkedIn. Let me take another look at his resume. So you'll notice that I didn't say in any of those personalized connection requests, hey, I need a job, please hire me.
Yeah.
And, that's a common mistake many job seekers make, where they think that networking is reaching out to somebody saying, hey, I really need this job. Can you hire me?
Yeah.
Hiring is a social enterprise. People want to work with people that they know. So networking is about building that relationship and getting known.
I absolutely love that. And there's literally so much good advice there. So listeners, definitely listen back to that and dive deep into that.
Yeah.
A question that I want to ask particular is kind of going back to those recycled job posts, or just job posts in general. Let's just say there's a job out there and it's posted a week ago. You applied, you get rejected. Okay. And you're super excited for that role. Let's say they repost that job in 3 weeks. How do you feel about reapplying for that job? If you change your cover letter, change your resume, or are you just kind of out of luck?
No, so I actually encourage students and any job seeker, reapply, right? Obviously, there's something that recruiter or that company is searching for, which would have made them repost that position.
Yep.
And maybe when you applied that first time, that resume wasn't really optimized to that job description, or that cover letter didn't really paint a clear story about why you were passionate about the company as well as that role. So reapply. And this time, really go through that job description and make sure that you're telling a complete story in your resume, as well as your cover letter. Always include that cover letter. And in your cover letter, you're trying to answer 2 things. What relevant experience do you have that would make you a great fit for that position?
That's great.
And why are you passionate about joining that company? Remember, you could have that same type of position at any company, but what is it about this company, about their mission and their values that really attracts you? Now, when it comes to writing that cover letter, when you're highlighting that experience that you have, often you'll hear these undergraduate students say, well, I don't have any experience. I didn't do an internship, or I don't have any work experience. You do have experience. Those projects that you've been doing throughout your academic career, that's your experience. Remember, these companies understand that if you're graduating, you're an entry-level candidate. They don't expect you to have, full-time work experience. When they say experience, they're looking to see what sort of projects have you done. Are you able to work well with others? This is why those group projects that we've all come to, dread in school, this is why they're so important, because it demonstrates your ability to work well and communicate with others.
That's so good. I want to kind of keep moving down this funnel as well. So we talked about how to identify jobs, how to stand down the job process, reapply as well. Let's just say you land that interview. You land your very first interview with a company of your dreams. How do you go into that first interview to set the tone, to make a great first impression? What are the research, the preparation that should be done? And once you actually get that conversation, can you stand out?
Yeah. So you only have one shot of making a great first impression. So do your homework. Be as prepared as possible. There's a wealth of information that's shared with candidates before they interview, through the job description itself, through the interview invitation that you would have received. Do your research on the company. There are so many resources such as LinkedIn and Glassdoor where you could learn more about the company and its history. Go through their LinkedIn posts and see what are some of the recent news and trends that have been happening for this company, as well as in its broader industry, right? What industry is this company in? And what has been taking place within that industry? For the folks that you'll be interviewing with, check out their LinkedIn profiles, do a quick search online, understand a little bit more about their career trajectory. While you're putting all this together, or you're going through all this, put together some questions. What questions do you have about the company or about these trends that are taking place in the industry and how it's going to impact the company? What questions do you have for the hiring manager who's going to interview you about his or her career background and their career journey? Remember, at the end of that interview, you're going to be asked, do you have any questions for us? The only wrong answer is no, I don't have any questions. You always want to go in there with questions.
Always.
And, I tell job seekers, make a list of 10 to 15 questions. Obviously, you're not going to ask all 10 to 15 of them. Your goal is to ask 2 to 3. But make a list of 10 to 15 because throughout the course of the interview, several of those questions may be answered. And go there with a notepad. It doesn't hurt to have a notepad that you refer to every now and then that you've jotted your questions down. Another thing to do, in addition to, doing your research on the company and the interviewers and the industry and putting together those questions, is really scan through that job description. And for each bullet, every responsibility listed in that job description, write down a few bullet points about what you've done that would qualify for that. If one of the bullet points is that, or one of the responsibilities is that you're responsible for developing, engaging front-end web interfaces. Maybe write down a few notes about a project that you did during your undergraduate career in one of your courses where you had to design the front end of a website. What technologies did you use?
So good.
What was the deadline? Did you work in a team? What did you learn from that experience? And why does that make you a great fit for taking on that particular responsibility? So you want to go in there with your homework done so that way any question that's thrown at you regarding the responsibility, you have a response that's based in fact, that you could point to something concrete to say, I have done this.
That is so good. And I remember when I was searching for jobs, I want to double down on this as well. Back when I was even an undergraduate, like 3 or 4 years ago, whatever the time was. But I remember I went through my resume and all my bullet points, and each bullet point I thought about, if they ask me this question, I can use this bullet point in a story from this. And that was really beneficial to even run through it 2 or 3 times. You go into that interview and say, if they ask me, what's a challenge you've had and how did you overcome it? You can go to your resume, you have it referenced, and you can be like, well, and then tell the story. So that's great advice to be able to practice that and actually be able to take that into an interview.
Definitely. I always tell job seekers as well, anything that's on your resume is fair game to be, thoroughly examined during an interview.
Yeah.
Know your resume in and out. Every skill that you've listed in your skills section, every bullet point that you've written for, a volunteering opportunity or a project or any type of internship or work experience you've had, be able to elaborate on it. Be able to express what it is that you've done, what you were responsible for, the actions that you took, and what that outcome was from that action. And if you use that model, that framework that I just shared, you can keep your responses to interview questions very concise, but make them much more impactful. Because a common mistake that interviewers or interviewees make is that they don't know when to stop speaking.
Yeah.
So if you use that framework, you can ensure that your responses are concise and that they answer the questions and that they're impactful.
Talking about impact, I think this has been one of our most impactful interviews, and just a simple 3-step process on how to identify a job, stand out in the application, and then actually do a great job in the interview. So I do want to wrap it up there, but I do want to ask you before we leave, just advice for someone that is in a job or in the job search right now. What's kind of just one more tip that you'd give them?
Be highly organized. Keep track of everything that you've been doing in reaching your goal. So I encourage my job seekers, have a spreadsheet where you track the company that you applied to, the position that it was that you applied to. Did you target your resume? Yes or no? Did you include a targeted cover letter? Yes or no? Include the LinkedIn URLs of the recruiters and the hiring managers that you reached out to. Include a column for notes about, what the job entails. What's something that made you really interested in applying? Because you get into the zone of applying to dozens of positions per week. Yeah. And when you do hear back from one, it's when did I apply to this position? What was that role within? But now you can refer back to this spreadsheet to say, oh, hey, I applied to this position because I was really enamored with the company's mission. And I reached out to this person because they had a great background in, tech justice. So really be organized and methodical in your approach to applying, and be persistent and consistent. Carve out time every day to apply, and every rejection, use it as a redirection.
I love it. Every direction as a redirection. I love that. Mahindra, I want to thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I thought that this was super impactful with those 3 steps that you laid out on how to really stand out. So before we go, last question for you. Someone's like, oh my God, I need to learn more from Mahindra and ask him a follow-up question. Where can they reach out to you and learn more about you?
Definitely. So I'm accessible via LinkedIn. I constantly share tips and interview preparation tips and other resources to support job seekers. So definitely feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Mahindra, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
For the interview.
All right. Thank you so much.